because I always need a little Ann in my life. And there's a lot to get to. And one thing, the reason why I reached out was because you've been on this show pointing this out for feels like a couple of years, and you've been writing about this for feels like forever, that the president did not need to wait for the Congress to get money for the border wall. He could have just gone to, I guess, the Pentagon, Department of Homeland Security. You're an attorney, and you do your research, and you do a lot of reading. And you had said this, and you'd reported it here, and we all thought that sounds great. And then, lo and behold, it turns out the Supreme Court is not stopping the president from getting the funds from the Pentagon. This is remarkable. What are the details?
Yes. Well, the detail is in the Constitution. He's the commander-in-chief. He has control of the entire executive branch. And, you know, as I've always said, people think it's, and I'm not saying the president doesn't have the right to do this, but they grasp that the president could decide, oh my gosh, we need to send troops to Grenada. We're going to send troops to El Salvador. We're going to bomb Syria. And there isn't, I mean, unless liberals are opposed to the military action entirely, nobody says, oh my gosh, where did he get the authority to do that? This is crazy. It's like he's, issuing opinions. That isn't his job. No, of course, this is what his job is. He's commander-in-chief of under the Constitution, and the primary responsibility is to defend the borders of this country. For the first few hundred years, that's mostly what our military did. It built walls, fortresses, fortifications. It was along the border, mostly along the ports back then, because that's how we'd be attacked. But yeah, okay. So we have that court ruling saying the president has the authority to use military funds to defend our border. We also have the ruling from last year. You know, this kind of passed without comment, I'm sure not with Breitbart readers, but the famous Muslim ban that was supposed to be the sign of galloping fascism in America. Right, that went to the Supreme Court, and more than a year ago at this point, the Supreme Court found, yep, president has the right, both under the Constitution and under statutory law, to exclude whomever he wants in the interests, if it's in the best interest of the United States. So, I mean, many have been asking on Twitter, including the fabulous John Binder from Breitbart, why hasn't he just invoked that same section of the law? It is in the interest of the United States to exclude anyone from, and you could list any number of Central and Latin American countries, the ones that are pouring across our border now, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico.
But Ian, I have to cut in because you're mispronouncing it, because I watched the Democrat debate the other night, and I know it's pronounced Guatemala, because that's how Julian Castro, who doesn't speak Spanish, I learned. I didn't realize that, but he apparently does.
He's taking lessons right now.
Yeah, he doesn't speak Spanish, but he pronounces it Guatemala. This is it. I know, Ann, we're making the Soros-funded freaks who monitor the show's lives very easy for content, but why is it that only Latino culture do we appropriate with the use of languages that have a derivative from Latino, Hispanic culture, whatever you want to call it? Why is it that we all do this? We say Latino and burrito. This is my obsession. I can't get it. We don't do an Irish accent, or we don't do a European accent.
Yeah.
When Dr. Gorka's on, he's not doing a Hungarian accent. I mean, it's like, why are we just pick out, like, but we just say Guatemala. What is that? Where did that come from?
It's enraging. I think it's done specifically with the purpose of irritating Ann Coulter. No, but it wasn't just Latino. Remember, Obama couldn't pronounce Pakistan. It was always Pakistan.
Pakistan.
No, but you're right. We don't say Deutschland.
Yeah, right. Exactly. We just say Germany. Is that speaking of? We got the EU army coming, and Germany is going to be the biggest portion of it. That sounds great. That sounds like a great formula. First, we're all clamoring for that. Who doesn't have EU army led by Germany fever in this? I mean, it's what the world needs.
Yes, especially now that Germany, the German army will be mostly Muslim.
We're kind of heading that way. There was a massive story at Breitbart, one of our highest traffic stories this week, was actually on this exact topic, where a Muslim migrant, apparently with a sword of some kind, attacked another migrant in the street and just hacked him to pieces in broad daylight, and apparently no one did anything. Wild.
Wow. We really are headed for, I mean, this is what I found sort of strange about the left's obsession with Russia. If you're paying attention to what is going on throughout the continent of Europe and some of Asia, if anything, I'd like to form a NATO with Russia and the former Soviet bloc countries to help them protect themselves against the EU countries under Angela Merkel's control.
Yes. So here's and I'm skipping around a lot, but when you think about any criticism that the president has for any person, especially people of color, is now it's all racism. But what I've been saying is that if a bunch of secular globalist socialists from France were immigrating illegally, I think the president would be equally irritated by that, and I think you and I would be equally irritated by that as well. I don't think it really has to do with the skin tone. I mean, that's not the point.
No, that's clearly right. It's a defensive thing. Luckily for liberals, these aren't, Tartars or or Russians. Luckily,
that's it. If they were Russians, they would be the ones they'd make a human wall. If it was Russians streaming over the border, they'd go down there and hold hands for 2,000 miles, wouldn't they?
That's right.
It'd be like a Red Rover game.
The liberal system for admitting the rest of the world is discriminatory against people who don't live within walking distance.
Yes.
How about the poor of Bangladesh? Oh, no, they're not within walking distance. Moreover, we didn't do anything to Latin America.
Right.
I should have named my book Mugged, You're Not Black, because I find myself constantly having to tell people, whether it's, gays, feminists, now these various ethnic lobbies, no, screw you, we didn't do anything to you. This is just an anti-white male platform. Yes, African Americans have a special history in this country, and I mean descended from slaves African Americans, not showing up last week like Joyanne Reed, and pretending we owe her, though we've behaved as if we owe her. No, the descendants of American slaves should have special rights and privileges, not in a big way, in a constitutional way, but they can tell us which words to use. I think America owes something to them and probably shouldn't have started dumping low-wage workers on the country to compete with them right
yes.
as African Americans are getting out from under the democratic policies of Jim Crow and as we heard many times in last night's debate, and actually any moment, probably right now on MSNBC, the policies of slavery. I mean, the fact that it gets overused and gets deployed for stupid reasons doesn't mean it's not true. But my point is to say only you, and I don't know why American blacks are allowing their history, their experience, to be watered down by Indians, Asians, Bangladeshis, Joy Reid, where's she from? Jamaica, Bahamas, something like that. People who arrived, Ilhan Omar, people who arrived last week and suddenly acts like we owe them something. No. The reason we have all these civil rights laws, the reason we have special provisions in the Constitution, the reason we allow black people to tell us, no, we can use the N-word, but you can't, is because of the history of slavery. That doesn't mean every non-white person gets to boss us around.
It's so well said. And I want to go back to one thing quickly, because I already have 20 questions I want to ask you about the debate and your reaction to some of the elements of it. But I need to get your assessment of I need to fully flesh out what your thinking is now. So we should be able to get some more funds, or at least there's not a hold on them, to get the wall building, to get the wall up. First of all, so what steps do we need to take? And second of all, what is your reaction to all of the people, including the literal hundreds of calls I've taken on this show, which have said that we have to wait for Congress? The president has there's nothing he can do. There's nothing he can do. It's all about Congress. And now we learned it's not all about Congress.
And it never was.
So what do we do now? How do we go forward and start moving quickly here?
Well, I think it would help a lot if the president would start listening to me instead of Kim Kardashian. I think that would be a major step forward. Did you see that this rapper He just made a big public spectacle of himself, asking Sweden to release him from jail. One of his big hits calls for the assassination of President Trump.
Can I be perfectly honest with you? And I think my audience knows this without me having to say this. And I totally tuned out of this story. It had zero appeal to me. I don't think I read past the headline on a single one of these ASAP Rocky stories. It registered.
I've just given you all you need to know.
A total zero.
Which is probably all I know.
Well, this is the thing. Like, I kind of like the idea of a space force, but I would prefer a wall force. So it's all a priority thing. It's all, let's get the wall force built, and then we'll do the space force. Space force is great. We'll do wall force first. So anyway, we need wall force. But let's.
But I would say to the 3D chess people, and the ones getting testy with me for pointing out the truth that Trump isn't keeping his promises. Do you think he's going to be more or less likely to keep those promises if he wins a second term? My view is this is our last shot, not only for the Trump presidency, but as I've said before, I think for the country. It is tipping fast. This is why so many of us, maybe not every single person who voted for Trump, but I think an awful lot of us voted for him, despite some obvious shortcomings. And you know that look at the last midterm election. We look how close Texas and Florida were. This has been a long-term plan of the Democrats. They've written about it. I quote them in Adios America. This isn't a fantasy. They have been planning on flipping the entire country blue through the process of immigration. They can't convince Americans to vote for them. Let's bring in ringers. Let's bring in people who vote for leaders like Hugo Chavez, and that's what they're getting. I don't know how you could watch that Democrat debate without thinking, oh, I see, the Democratic Party's base is the exact same people who voted for Hugo Chavez. That is what this country will be headed for. We have 16 months left for Trump to keep his promises. And going around and defending everything he says, look, fine, vote for him in the end. I'm going to vote for him in the end, but I voted for McCain and Romney. That's not going to help him. What's going to help him is building a substantial portion of the wall, finally signing that executive order on anchor babies. I wrote about that in The Hill this week to refresh I'm sure your Breitbart listeners know all about anchor babies, but refresh yourself. Look up that article in The Hill. The whole thing was invented by Justice Brennan, slipped in a footnote. There is no carefully deliberated law that was passed giving anchor babies citizenship. No Supreme Court has ever held anchor babies.
And we did talk about anchor babies this week, and your column is excellent. We'll link to it when we write up this interview. And we talked about
taxing remittances. I mean, these are all things he does that through the Treasury Department. Yes. He doesn't need Congress. Do something. I am begging you, Mr. President, and I'm begging you, 3D chess Trumpsters. This is our last chance to put pressure on this guy.
So I'm optimistic that he'll get competitive in the second term, and he'll still want to do stuff. He won't be as much of a lame duck as I think other people would.
Oh no, I think all he's going to be doing is promoting Ivanka merchandise. He's utterly lazy, narcissistic, and as for these fights he's getting in,
sure.
I'm sick of defending him on stuff that doesn't matter. Yes, of course, liberals are insane and they're being preposterous in this whole Baltimore thing and Ilhan Omar. Yeah, it's kind of fun, but what I want the hysteria to be about is the wall going up. And then I want Trump's wonderful skill of not caring about annoying liberals and, in fact, seeming to quite enjoy it. That's when I want that wonderful quality to take over. I want him to proceed to keep his promises, have that cause the hysteria. Instead, it's always a tweet causing the hysteria. And, yes, the hysteria is funny, and we all have a laugh, and it makes Democrats look ridiculous. But let's do it over something that matters and not a tweet.
Yeah, I like this, and I like your plan too. So we'll get the wall built with the war funds. Then you do the travel ban on the 4 Mexican countries, which is what Fox referred to them. And Did
they really? One of my friends refers to all Latin Americans as Mexicans. He can't keep them straight.
Yeah, it's a Fox at a Chiron where they referred to Mexican countries, and
that is hilarious.
I've adapted it on the show and made it my own. So then we tax the remittances, and then we go from there. But there's something in Adios America, Ann, that I cite as often as just about anything that is someone else's idea on the show, which is you talking about how our immigration system right now is basically like the New England Patriots drafting the 100 people who live closest to the stadium and putting them on the field versus trying to get the best people.
Worse than that.
Yes. So
Tom Brady has a cousin. He's blind.
Yeah, but he lives next door.
Crap! You got to bring him in because he's related to Tom Brady.
He found one of the doors wasn't locked to the stadium, so now he's inside, and so he's a linebacker now. Yeah, that's how we do. I know that's all your stuff, Ann. So I'd say I'm.
Is there any other circumstance in which just the anchor baby thing alone? If Trump could just get Democrats to defend the anchor baby policy by passing an executive order, by pressuring Congress to pass a law to end it. No matter how much the Democrats scream about white supremacy and racism, I am telling you, most Americans are going to stop in their tracks and say, wait a second, Rachel, could you go back and explain that anchor baby policy to me again?
Yes, it's so illogical. He should for sure do something about it, and it will trigger all the right people, but it'll be productive too. But there was literally a debate broke out whether or not we should have any sort of a point system for people who are immigrants to the country, whether or not we should have PhDs, which, and I'm sure you're with me that I don't think we necessarily have the higher opinion of PhDs than we do other people. But the point is,
right, it's a metaphor.
It's a metaphor. It's that skilled people get a leg up over people who are unskilled and are going to compete with the people who need a leg up in this country, the people who are already fighting to have a little better wage and keep their job. We're not importing competition for them. We're importing competition, if we must, for high-skilled people. And that would be, it's the most logical idea, the simplest idea. This was literally, this was a debate topic. The Democrats don't know where they stand on whether or not you should draft the best football player or the guy who lives next to the stadium.
Yes. No, I think they consider it discriminatory. I think it was Cory Booker who said it was denouncing that the other. Wasn't it Cory Booker? I must say,
immigrants against each other.
Thunder was on at the same time, so I did flip away periodically. But I think it was Cory Booker who was indignant. And now they want to take immigrants based on their skills.
So here's the other debate. Whether or not crossing the border illegally is in fact a crime. That was the other debate. Yeah, they're split on that. Whether or not crossing illegally is criminal.
Well, they're pretty much solid on it not being criminal. It's just how they phrase the lie, as far as I can tell. Some of them are at least smart enough to realize, wait, but I don't want the voters to know that. Incidentally, and I haven't been keeping track. I don't even read the New York Times except once a month now and then. Two very liberal op-ed columnists in the last month after the first debate, Thomas Friedman and Frank Bruni, wrote entire columns saying, Democrats, are you out of your minds? You are for open borders. If you're not going to have a penalty, that is open borders, and you are guaranteeing a loss. Americans, immigrants, blacks, whites, Hispanics do not want anyone to be able to stroll into the country and start collecting, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, housing aid. It's just crazy that they simultaneously claim, they're going to have all of these gold-plated programs and everybody's going to have beautiful medical care. And don't worry, it's only going to cost $30 trillion a year. And we're going to invite the whole world to participate.
So, Ann, let's go to the debate again and the state of play for the Democratic left, which is it's all a left-wing open borders deal. And when Biden put his hand up, I thought was an opportunity when he was free health care for legal aliens. So basically, American citizens are penalized and are taxed and are forced to pay a penalty because we're citizens and to the benefit of illegal aliens who come into the country. Are you with me that if Biden had just not put his hand up and in fact jumped in the way of the question and said, this is a trap, they're baiting us into taking an extreme position, we cannot do this, we can't afford it, it's un-American, he would have sewn up the nomination right there. He would not have had to show up to another debate. He could have just waited.
I kind of think that's true, although the audience, that was a crazy audience. They would have booed him. You know what it reminded me of? Your audience will remember this, and they may have been a little testy with me for this, too. I wrote about it in Never Trust a Liberal Over 3. And that was that period after Obama was elected. I think it was the 2010, 12, 14. The fever may have broken, but you can check my numbers on this, where the Tea Party candidates kept costing Republican Senate seats, which allowed, all kinds of terrible judges to be approved, Obamacare to go through. There was, I'd say I don't mean to insult these people, but in a way, some of them I kind of do. Todd Aiken, Richard Murdoch, Christine O'Donnell. Here's one I don't mean to insult. She was scammed by her campaign consultants, and I am still trying to get the names of those campaign consultants. Anyone listening, please help me. The people who convinced Linda McMahon, the wrestling lady in Connecticut, to run not once, but twice, when there was a perfectly good Republican, Rob Simmons, who could have won that election. I know Connecticut. I'm from Connecticut. I don't care how lovely she was. Connecticut was not voting for the wrestling lady. We're not Minnesota. That was just, oh, look, she still has money in this other bank account. Let's convince her to run again. So we get screwed over by consultants, mostly, not mostly, but partially by that long period where right-wingers were supporting candidates that absolutely could not win because, the lesser of two evils is still evil. Yeah, these are great statements, but we're working in a democracy. One person wins, one person loses, and the more Republicans that lose, that means more Democrats win, and then the country is over.
Okay, and that's not a good thing. We don't want the country to be over. And you have time to hang with me for a little bit more?
Sure.
Okay, great. Let's take and you had one of the tweets of the night where you pointed out Kirsten Gillibrand throwing her own husband under the bus in a pretty humiliating way, saying that Gillibrand's husband must enjoy her telling the world that she's the primary bread earner and caregiver in her household. Her performance was the cringiest of them all, and I watched Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, so I knew how bad it could get. Hers was still the worst, but her saying she should be elected so that she could white-splain whiteness to other white women was one of the most surreal moments for me. I was stunned. I was stunned.
I agree. I cannot believe what a moron that woman is. I think she's pretty much done. I was never, bowled over by her intellect, but last night, oh my gosh, that white privilege thing, her white privilege, and she'd explain, wow. But yeah, of course, my favorite moment was imagining Mr. Gillibrand listening to her announce to the world that she is the primary bread earner and caregiver in my family. Well, what does your waste for space husband do?
No, honestly, this is when she follows it up with, but he's some sort of, but he is the number one volunteer at a soup kitchen or something. You got to throw him a bone or something. So, what do we know? Because I actually am in a strange position where that's my life at the moment, but my wife is in training as a medical doctor. So she's arguably doing more important stuff than, blogging and talking into a microphone. So
you are saving the country.
Well, I'm trying my best. Some days I feel more confident in that mission than others. But but it is interesting because it's like she didn't even throw him a bone. It was basically just she was white woman splaining to the world, and I can't get enough of it. And she at least thought this was worthy of praise. At a minimum, she thought this was a good idea. And you had the tweet of the night, but I was sitting there and I was looking at our communication service we use at Breitbart with our virtual newsroom, and everyone was going, "What did we just witness here? Like ritualistic humiliation of your spouse on international audience? Are you kidding me?"
Yes, that was very good. What were some other great moments?
Okay, I'll give you some of my favorites. Here are some of my favorites. I liked Biden saying he's going to eliminate coal, fracking, fossil fuels, and he's going to win the Midwest. So he's going to do all of those things.
He seemed to sort of cushion it. I mean, he is a good politician. I used to work many years ago for the Senate Judiciary Committee, and I showed up thinking he was a boob and a ridiculous character.
Yeah.
As we all watched him, he does have very good political instincts, and I think you can kind of see it on display. I mean, one of the things maybe it was you guys, identified as an error he made. I think isn't an error when he walked up, and he didn't know this was being caught on mic, but saying to Kamala Harris, go easy on me, kid. No, that was just him being friendly. He has that nice politician's manner. And on the fracking and coal, yes, I would think that would be a bit of a mistake, but he softened it in some way, saying something about because I know his plan is,
Sure.
We'll find other jobs. His plan is that whole coding thing.
Yeah. But it seems like a bit. I see. For me, if I was advising him, I would say that you got to ignore the left-wing blue check marks on Twitter and the pundit reaction, and know that there is probably half of the people who are going to vote in the Democratic primary don't like anything everyone else is saying on this stage. They literally like none of it. And so just, kind of stick to your guns and just say that, no, we hate pollution and we hate waste, and we want to use the market to try to make sure things are cleaner, and we're going to do what we can to make sure we're polluting less. But no, we're not going to get rid of coal and fossil fuels and stuff in the short term. But,
the moment they are looking forward to, as AOC has said directly, and I got to say they're getting close to it. They will not need the vote of a single white male in America. That's the old Democratic Party. They're going to be the party as it was described 20 years ago by Roy Teixeira and Patrick Reddy, others who were describing this wonderful plan of theirs to overwhelm the country with third worlders, to have it be, in addition to the usual assortment of nuts, college professors, feminists, that sort, angry, bitter divorcees, it will be African Americans who vote 90% for the Democrats, and immigrants who are both Asian and Hispanic immigrants are voting 80% for the Democrats.
Yes, this is a major issue, and we talk about demographics a fair bit on the show. If only anyone would have written something about it. I'm pretty sure Mark Stein wrote about this 20 years ago, and I'm sure you've been writing about it for as long, Ann.
No, he wanted exactly the opposite.
Which is?
Remember, his was, we need more people. Europe is dying because they don't have enough people.
Okay, versus
he had the
maybe I'm not
exact
remembering
opposite
correctly.
Position of me on demographics up until Adios America.
Wow. Okay, maybe I need to refresh myself.
Because I kept arguing with I love Mark Stein. I think he's hilarious. I think he's brilliant.
Yeah.
But what is it? America Alone. It's a very funny book. I highly recommend it. But the gist of it is, you need, or at least my takeaway, you need more and more people. You need to constantly increase population. Oh my gosh, Europe is dying because they're not replacing themselves. And I kept arguing with my friends who had read it, saying, no, it's the people you're getting. I want quality, not quantity here.
So, but I do think that we do need to convince people, and I don't know if we're convincing people, and even though our arguments are better, I don't know if we're convincing them at the rate that the left is buying them. And this is really what these debates turned into. I mean, literally, Yang is pitching just flat out, I'm stroking you a check. There's all of this. Biden even started to refer to, I'm going to invest.
Yeah.
Like as if it was, as if he was balancing his checkbook, and he looked at his online Wells Fargo account and he said, well, no, I can send, I'm going to send money off here. It's as if it's his own money. And this is the thing that's very scary now, which is that that is the way really both parties now treat spending.
Yes, that's true. The Democrats pioneered it, and oh boy, are they taking it to a new level. That's actually a really beautiful description of the entire Democratic debate last night. I don't think it ever works out when A bribes B using C's money.
Right.
And that's the entire logic of the Democratic Party.
Okay, I got to bounce one more off you because you're someone who lives in Manhattan. Someone else who lives in Manhattan, or you do at least some of the time. You've many places, so I'm not outing where Ann is all the time. And Ann's all over the place. You could maybe relate to what Andrew Yang had said, that the doomsday clock for global warming actually expired 10 years ago, so it's too late. It's too late, and so he encouraged people to seek higher ground. So I looked up, where does Andrew Yang live? He must live, I don't know, a mile, maybe a mile and a quarter above sea level. He has to live there. No, he lives in Manhattan, 33 feet above sea level. So I was. So
didn't you see that movie where Jake Gyllenhaal had to hide in the New York Public Library?
Yeah, I think everyone but Yang saw that movie. It's the one where the tidal wave, it just comes through.
Yeah,
it's the height of the Empire State Building.
I'm actually looking forward to it because then I'd have beachfront property.
Well, that's going to be really nice. It's once the Malibu average home goes down under 50 million, then I'll start taking this seriously. That we're all going to drown. I mean, the climate hysteria. Did we hit a peak over this week? Do you think, or not?
I was thinking, watching these guys weeping about global warming and making their hysterical predictions. Okay. The Democrats are totally winning every fat co-ed in the country because those are the people who seem to believe the most in global warming, the chubby co-eds who are always weeping and crying. And the planet, what does it matter if the planet is dying? It's a cruel thing they're doing to not very bright people to get them so afraid of this. But I think in another 30 years when we continue to do nothing and nothing has changed, they will be in the position of a majority of Americans. You've been trying to scare us on this for a really long time. I'm sure you know this off the top of your head, Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth, when did that come out? That he said we had to eliminate the internal combustion engine or the planet would be over, in a decade, in 2 decades? The book came out 2 decades ago. We've been hearing about this for 30 years. It's always an emergency. We have to do something right away. The world is going to change. It'll be over in 7 years and 10 years and 12 years. We do nothing and nothing happens. It's hard to scare us now.
Yeah, I think I read that people put together a list of 10 doomsday predictions that have already passed. And Gore's passed, I think, was 2016. So if I remember correctly, it was 10 years after 2006. And it's one of these things where, and these are supposed to be the pro-science crowd. They can't decide on when is the drop date. So Yang says it was 10 years ago. Beto says it's 10 years from now. AOC said it was 12 years from now, but then she said she was joking. Buttigieg said it was 12 and 11 during the debate. So they can't decide what the science is, but they're telling us the science is settled, and thus we need to move to higher ground. Aside from Yang, he's going to have Manhattan to himself. So what are we supposed to do here? Like, what are we supposed to read into this?
That the way Democrats like to win debates is by browbeating everyone who disagrees with them, threatening to take away their employment. How about this guy, this actor? I haven't heard of him. The one who said he thinks it's inappropriate for parents to be giving their prepubescent children hormone blockers because they've announced they're transgender.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, this is Mario Lopez. So he was in the show. Yeah. This is.
Oh my gosh, the hate for him! His Wikipedia page was changed immediately that he's anti-woman and homophobic and transphobic because he says something that. Come on, let's be honest. 95% of all people agree with, but they denounce anyone who says it and then say, "You see, everyone agrees with us." No, we're terrified. You're going to attack us.
And so, but the problem is,
the same thing with global warming. Well, I'm sorry, I just don't believe. I know there were polls taken this in the past. I haven't looked one up recently, but I'm not sure I would totally trust the poll the same way we couldn't trust the polls on Trump. If you're going to browbeat to destroy the lives and careers and families and children of anyone who disagrees with you, that's not the best time to take a poll.
Yes, and the fear-mongering, you'd never be allowed to see this fear-mongering about Russia, this fear-mongering about the climate, this fear-mongering about if you raise your child to believe they are their biological sex. This is now something that you need public humiliation and condemnation, and you need the Twitter mob unleashed upon you. And sadly, he caved. He ended up giving a really sniveling, weak apology. And The Rock did the same thing. These are the muscliest guys I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And they can't take a few hate tweets, Ann. Is it The Rock said something nice about... Yeah.
I mean, as two of us take a lot more than that, and a lot more hits to our income than that. But I assume it's just 100% his agent telling him, you got to do it, you got to do it. In this town, you're not going to work again. But how crazy is that? And which reminds me, why weren't any of the Democrats asked about that? Can we ask them? Will
Yes.
anyone ever ask them, what is a woman?
Yes, exactly. And it's the why, what do you think of how all of a sudden all of these world records are falling in women's sports? But between
I love that.
weightlifting and sprinting, all these world records are falling. Is this an incredible advancement in women's biology, or is it that they're actually men breaking the records? Like, can we get?
I love that. It's so unfair. These poor women athletes.
It's unfair to women. Yes.
Yeah, I loved, wasn't it Martina Navratilova?
Yes.
Who said something about this, how it's unfair for a woman to play against men. And the trans community ganged up on her. How dare you? This is so outrageous. You're prejudiced. You're anti-trans. And so she said, okay, I'm sorry. I don't know as much about it. I made a quick statement. I'm going to research it and get back to you. So she spent some time researching it, and 2 weeks later came back and said, oh my gosh, it's so much worse than I thought. You people are insane.
Yes. It's only going to get worse at this point. And this is where, and I do feel like the divide is just going to get too much, because I'm going to raise my children to be their biological sex until they're old enough to really make adult decisions about how they want to spend their life. And until then, they're going to be protected. And now it is something where you're not allowed to protect your kids from the social justice crap that has infected every corner of our society. It's in our sports now. It's in our schools. And I was in the bookstore in D.C. a week or so ago. They've got Robert Mueller action figures. They've got kids' books about Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris. They have to politicize infancy. Infancy is now a political thing now on the left. And this is the stuff, this is so much scarier to me than sea levels rising around Andrew Yang's high-rise condo in Manhattan.
I bet those Robert Mueller coloring books are on sale now.
They probably are. He went away very quickly. And you've been so generous with your time. Everyone should do themselves a favor and read all of Anne's books. And many of them are on audiobook now, read by Anne, which is great because she's got a great a delivery and sense of comedic timing, as you guys know. We'll just leave it there, and I will thank the one and only great Ann Coulter.